Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this very amazing session. My name is Seyitan Atigarin. I am a news anchor, broadcast journalist, and the head of the entertainment and culture desk at Arise News Television. It is my pleasure today to moderate this very important conversation on culture, creator, and screens, the new pipeline. Now, today we are unpacking how African and, like I said, Nigerian creators are navigating a rapidly evolving landscape. Just to set the tone of this conversation, like I said earlier, it's about culture, creator, and screens, the new pipeline. I want to go around the room and find out from, you are stakeholders in this industry, in one or two sentences, when you hear the new pipeline, what does that mean to you as a creator, as a founder, as a platform leader, or even a policymaker in this space? I'll start with you again.
I really like this question, by the way. And the reason I like it is because I started working in the Nigerian entertainment scene in 2010. I'm not going to reveal my age. But at that age, I worked at MTV. I used to head up production for them. So to see what the content was like then, to see what it's like now. Like, I think we, at MTV, we did one of the first interviews with your Burna Boys, your Davidos, your Wiz Kids. And so just to see that incredible evolution and the fact that these guys are getting global deals and earning millions of dollars and monetizing, like, I'm so proud to have been part of that movement from the beginning. So that pipeline then lacked a lot of infrastructure. So the fact they've come that far, and our infrastructure is still not great, for me is like, shows the sky's the limit. So right now, 2025, at our agency, we focus a lot on creators and influencers. So again, I've seen in the back end of what is possible in this market. So prime example, a client will come to us and say, Susan, we want to run an influencer campaign, but we want the biggest celebrity, the A-lister. We don't care how much it costs, 20 million naira. And I always ask them, why? Why do you want this person that's going to cost you 20 million naira? That's a lot of money to invest. Consider working with a micro or a nano influencer because they have very highly engaged communities. They care more about the product normally, and also they're going to cost you a lot less. So in regards to that pipeline, we're basically mimicking what's happening in the West right now, but we're just lacking that infrastructure. So I feel like, give us another 5 years, we're already making quite a lot of money. I believe our industry is about $400 million across the board in Nigeria right now. And something like the K-pop industry is about $10 billion. So give us like 5 years, we're gonna catch up with them. And we can go into why and how, but it's just a matter of time right now.
Yeah, we'll get there. Does anybody want to just kind of add on that? Maybe two more people. What does the pipeline actually mean to you? Want to kind of set the tone and define it, Colette?
Having better ownership, right? It's really, for me, how I see it is us actually owning our own platforms so that we can maximize, how we grow within those platforms. Yes, I know what we've done in the Afrobeat space, and I know what we had to do to ensure that we were getting awards on the BET stage and not behind closed doors as it was then. And now that a lot of us are now in the content space as well, we need to replicate some of those structures that we put in and do it on the content space. But I also then think that we also need to look at how do we have ownership so that when the big companies come in, they're looking at great collaborations and they're not looking at us thinking, oh God, I can't even go into that market. There's no one I can collaborate with. There are no big kind of companies. How do we start creating our own Netflix? How do we create our own Amazon Primes? How do we create our own Warner Brothers studios properly? And I think that also speaks to ownership, but also great collaboration. I love the fact that MTN is here because, girl, I'm going to chase you after. It's interesting that everybody wants to be in this space, but we also then need to look at structure as well, because a lot of people wake up and they say, yeah, I love this space, I want to be in there, but there's absolutely, there's not a lot of structure, and there's also not a lot of education that supports people that want to be in this space. So for me, it's really about how do we look at yes, I am going to say working with government to ensure that proper structure is in place. There's that kind of infrastructure which is educational. There's training infrastructure which is key across everywhere, across music, across our cultural sphere. We need that proper infrastructure in terms of knowing exactly what we're doing. And then I think ownership is really, really important, so that we start building structures that elevate us as a people, so that as we are growing as a people, and we're not relying on third parties from the abroad to come and, and make our dreams come true. So that's across the board in terms of cinema, in terms of production, in terms of training, in terms of ownership.
There's the conversation about, Africa, we're having a cultural moment. We are now content is the new gold or is the new oil. But in what ways is African culture, Nigerian culture actually impacting global narratives? And how can we use that to actually figure out what this new pipeline is?
I think with doing this, it sort of proved the thesis of how I thought the trend was going. From an authenticity standpoint, that sort of desire for actual authentic cultural content. And if you see, and when you look through as to how, maybe when you talk about how all these short form content is influencing how a film goes, I think that in many ways, all these things that we see with everybody creating and this new wave of just being purely African, it's translating, do you get? Because, there's a way that, so for example now in Osamede, a lot of times when people watch it and they hear this, it's a pure indigenous language movie, by the way, it's pure Bini, Edo language. And you have people who come out talking about how beautiful the language is, right? And they hear this Lahore, because the song made it popular and there was all these bites. And somebody like, oh, Lahore is Benin, so that's the language, it's so sweet. And then there's now this thing, so people didn't even realize, even we were joining a trend of this Lahore movement, but didn't even know, lots of people apparently didn't know this was Benin and this meant please or what have you. Yes, and so very interesting. And so also we've had the opportunity to showcased in a few countries outside of Nigeria. We premiered first at Cannes. At the Cannes Film Festival, thank you. We had, we would have normally like a 10 minutes Q&A afterwards. After we finished screening Osamede, we had nothing less than 40 minutes of interaction. And where was this interaction coming from? A lot of them were the African Americans saying to us that this movie, it felt like home, that there was something about it that made them feel that sense of their ancestry and wanted to come back. And all of these people, and we even had, some distributors saying to us that this is even comparing it to like The Woman King and all of that, but saying that it was more beautiful because it was in the raw language, it was shot on the land, in Edo State. You could feel the environment and the authenticity, the rawness, and nobody sort of criticizing or struggling with the language, everybody just accepting that. And it's a build-up, it's many things before now that you have that pride to be able to do something so raw, and then have acceptance. And it's a build-up of all these many things that we have been layering with different forms of the pipeline content that makes also it a bit more palatable, if I would put it that way. So yes, to the question of Africa, this is really it's very glaring across sectors as to how there's something about the continent and how important and significant our story is. And so in the reference also to sort of The Woman King, people were saying that in this instance, it's not about somebody else coming to tell your story for you. Do you get, or speaking your language in a funny way, or say that this is you giving up, your own, and then of course we hadn't tested what we had been used to in the epic genre side was more the southwestern epics, and there was no Edo South movie purely language based at this scale that had been done. And again, somewhat of a risk. One can even argue maybe there's some penalty for that risk to some form, but I think it's also understanding the audience who wants your product. And it's very nice to see that there's a huge, especially diasporan community who's very appreciative of that raw, and I think it's important that we're here and we have to tell these sort of bold, unapologetic stories in our forms in that way, because we have something to say. There's something very strong about our heritage, and it's imposing. And so this is what we want to tell, put it in your face that we can do this, and obviously with universal themes that everybody can, identify with, so to speak.
I want to find out, are creators truly experiencing that shift in power, or do the traditional gatekeepers still dominate access? And what does that access even mean in this, within this conversation of the new pipeline?
Currently, I think the creators are now the new gatekeepers. Why I'll say that, because they don't need any middleman anymore. Before, like you said, if you want to get a show on TV, you have to go through an agent or this or that. But right now, creators are literally picking up their phones and creating viral contents that are traveling across the globe. Let's go for, let's take an example with, what's his name? You want to bam bam, you want to roll with the big boys. What's his name again? He's an Edo boy. That Goyameno, that song was so viral globally that from New York PD to Detroit PD, they all made short form videos using just that song. And creators right now, especially for the creators that are using the social media platforms, I'm not talking about film creators right now, we'll get to film. Those that are, their distribution is on the social media platforms, I think they have control of everything that they always wanted. And the only thing you say, oh, the owners of the platform, but it's even easier for them because they have a payment system. If you have certain number of views, you're making money. I remember in 2017, I was talking with Fares, the head of Facebook Watch at the time, and it was like, oh, they're trying to monetize and do all of that. I'll explain something to you. 85% of the Nigerian population are on Facebook. You have a 5% who feel they're too posh, they only do Twitter. Another 10% do Instagram and Twitter because they're in the middle ground. They play both ways, and they have Facebook accounts. But the 85% are focused on Facebook. So you see that 85%, they go to Facebook because you could buy data coming to MTN, and you have packages that gives you social media access like YouTube or Facebook. And people can't spend money on data, food. Before, it used to be Coca-Cola. That was what their extra 2K for the month was spent on. But right now, it's data. And if they're going to spend money on data, that means they have to cut off every other subscription. Now, what the creators, these content creators, especially at this micro scale, have been able to do is create content they can easily push out on platforms like that, where monetization is happening, and then count the numbers. So you see a Brain Jotter, you see Mr. Sabinus, and you'll be wondering, how come this guy has a certain kind of lifestyle? When I checked the numbers, even I was blown away, and I asked myself, why are you making film? Do you understand? So they have control of their numbers. And because of what Africa is right now, Africa is the present and the future, whether we like it or not. And until we realize that and start, like Colette said, start to put in the right structures, the Western world will continue to feed off our creativity and our talent. I'll give you an example. In 2017, I was in Paris for the Nollywood Week Film Festival, and we happened to go to a club in Paris. And guess what? Every song that was played in that club was Afrobeat. Not a club owned by a Nigerian. And I was there wondering, like, okay, what exactly is happening? This was 2017. 2018, I was in New York, and my cousin picked me up. We were driving in his car, and it was one radio station, and they were playing Timaya. And I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting. Timaya in New York, Afrobeat in Paris. And then to crown it all, last year I was in Amsterdam. I know how girls do TikTok videos, and I saw a couple of white girls. I had to film it because it was interesting to watch. They were actually doing this TikTok dance, and it was all Afrobeats. I was at Amsterdam Central. Every airport supermarket you go, they're playing Rema, they're playing Aria Star, and they're watching Nollywood on YouTube. I'm not talking about Nigerians. I'm talking about the Dutch people, the foreigners. And it had me thinking, like, okay, so we are this global, but then we've not been able to put our own structures together so we benefit not just from those in diaspora, but locally. And I think until we put in those structures and start to create processes that will benefit us locally without the Western world earning, because yes, they make money from their content, but the platforms also make money, right? But I think that gatekeeping in this micro space has been reduced. But even in this film space, let's talk about bigger, longer form content right now, a whole lot of producers and creators have learned, because I always tell people, it's called show business for a reason. It's art and commerce. You cannot focus on one. You're going to tip the scale. There must be that balance at every time. So while you are mastering the art, you should also master the business. And that is something I think I have been able to do since I started this journey. Because if you do not focus on creating a business model that works for your art, then you're going to keep struggling. So that forced me to understand the conversations with platforms, distributors, who is buying, who is gatekeeping, how to maneuver these conversations, and how to get your content to where you want to get them to. At the macro scale, which is long-form storytelling and film and series, there's still a little bit of gatekeeping, and until we build proper structures and understand the business, we'll still be in that space for a while.
As a creative, you want to be focused on creating. You know, you don't see, you know, when you think about the US or the UK, where talent is the one trying to figure out like the business model. So my first question to my panelists today is, whose job is it? Who are we taking the charge to say, okay, this is the structure that we need. We've identified the problems and we need you to do this. And also, talking about intellectual property, I mean, you've mentioned it, Colette, talking about how it's important for ownership to exist. How can creators maintain control over their intellectual property while trying to expand across various platforms? What is our starting point?
We've always collaborated, and you know, we've looked at certain creators and we really want to collaborate with this person. I'll give you an example. We have a very, very successful series called Visa on Arrival. We are now on please come and give us money for it. Collaboration. So we're now on season 8. We just finished shooting season 8 of Visa on Arrival. And the way that came about was me because I always say, I have one foot in, one foot out, but I think I'm more on the business side. And you know, my job is to spot trends. It's also spot the talent as well. And with Visa on Arrival, and I say it all the time, I literally chased Bobby for 5 years and said, you must come and do this thing. I saw the talent, and you know, if you speak to Bobby, he'll say to you, Colette she's the only person who's ever said, create something and you have my full backing. That is what collaboration is. And you also have to trust. I trusted that he could develop something that made sense for us, and he's worked magic. And it's my job to protect him, protect the stories, and keep it going, because then everybody wins. Because now we have a huge production team. They come together twice a year, 2 seasons a year. We want to do 4. So I am coming to you guys at MTN. And we want to grow up. Yes. We also want to do spin-offs, because guess what? This is creating jobs. People are living their best lives. They have their livelihood that's being looked after, and that's what we want to do. Now, in regards to IP, that IP story is always very one kind as well. It's very, very tricky, because what you find a lot of the time is somebody has a great idea, they have a great product, but they don't necessarily have the funding. So it's a little bit of give and take, right? And, you know, we always say as a creator, it's up to you how you want to, you know, where you want to go, but you also have to be strategic as well. I can work with somebody for the first time because I'm thinking long term. I need to work with this entity because it will get my name through the door, it will build my reputation, and then I can get funding or whatever I need to get for my next projects. It's a funny balance, but I think that some of the greatest projects that have worked for us are the ones where we've worked with creators that understand. We create our own content, but we also collaborate a lot. We had a series called Shade Corner, and Shade Corner has brought out so much talent. And that came with, I don't know if you guys know Akka. So Akka literally came, he said, Colette, I have this idea. First season, we shot it in our office, literally in the corner of the office, and it grew. And you know, with Akka, I'm like, you're the creator, but we'll retain you as the producer as well. Anytime we shoot Shade Corner, you're always gonna be seen. Because what you find is some people will get into funny partnerships, and at the back end they'll be like, those people are wicked, they took my show, they did this, because they're not really, again, it depends who you're working with. But for us, it's like, again, how do we all win in this situation? You've come with a great product, we brought it to life, but we're ensuring that you're still with us on this journey right through. Even when we change our hosts, we did like a VJ search. Akka was right bang in the middle of that because it was his idea. So again, it's about us. Let's put ego aside as creators and let's start identifying business entities or business people or people that understand business. Like Lilian, she's an investment banker. Even Lilian, I'm going to hold on the side and say, listen, how do we do this? Because you need to understand that as a creative, let me be creative, but let me surround myself with the people that can get me to the promised land.
How are streaming services, short-form platforms, and social media transforming opportunities for creators now? And do you think that they're fully taking advantage of, this access that they have?
In regards to your question, one of the big barriers we face is, like you say, lack of education with, it can be brands, clients, corporations. They don't know how to monetize or maximize this incredible content that's being created. And I'm not a gatekeeper at the agency. We actually offer training for corporates and individuals to say, look, if you want to make money on TikTok, unfortunately in Nigeria, TikTok shop is not live for various reasons. Whereas if you have a UK account, US account, you can sell a fridge, you can sell a car, you can sell everything. So it feels like everything is stacked up against us in this country to make proper money. So I always try and empower people to say, look, make sure your content is hot, make sure that it has the potential to go viral, but most importantly, you must capture the essence of storytelling, whether that be emotionally driven, culturally driven, whatever it is, because that's the only way you're going to build an engaged audience and community. And it can take one video to tip you over the edge, just one. Prime example, there's something on TikTok right now called The Danish Deception by a Nigerian-American lady called Onyeka. She has literally gone viral over the past 4 days by posting her being conned, allegedly, by a Danish guy she was dating out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and she posted it in 25 parts over 4 days. I guarantee this person's going to be a millionaire by the end of the year after what she's posted, because she has such an engaged community talking about her heartbreak and how she got scammed. So my point there is that it doesn't matter where you're from, what part of the country you're from, we will always like emotional storytelling that is short form. And she's literally filming in her house, her dog is jumping up in the background. There's no costs involved there. She's literally talking about what happened to her. Whether or not it's true is another thing. No one cares. Yeah, exactly. So my point is that if you're a creator, get your content first of all, but also understand the back end. And that means, how can I monetize this? Put it out there. If it works, think, okay, what is the next step? Should I go live? Maybe I can monetize the live. What partners can I partner with to start advertising content? And then once you start building your community, honestly, the sky is your limit. And I applaud Nigerian creators all day and every day, because like I say, everything is stacked against us here. Like, your YouTubes, your TikToks, your Instagrams, they're not supporting us because it's so hard to pay in this country. It's so hard to verify what you're selling. So it's like, if you're making millions, my God, like, God bless you. Honestly, God bless you here. So what was the rest of your question, sorry?
Talking about like how streaming short form content
Yes.
and social media, how these platforms are changing
Yes. What's possible?
Nigerian creators.
Okay, so I think it's really just that. Basically, get your community going, your engagement going, partner with other brands as well to like get your money up, and then obviously try and secure your IP somehow, somewhere, which is very hard in this country. So you must have a very strong lawyer to enable you to do that. That's the only way you can do it. And then just keep pushing, like you said. I think you said that you can go global pretty much off the back of one viral piece of content. So you must act upon that. Don't just leave it to stagnate, like act upon it. And another thing about content as well I wanted to talk about. I run a content channel called AI African Stories. And I started it because I felt like my son needed to understand Black African history more. So it's basically just AI short form content that sits on TikTok and YouTube. And the engagement on that channel is insane. Like, my point in raising that is that people want to know what is happening here. They want to know our history, and we just need to own our storytelling, get it right, and just act upon that.
How do we own it? But how do we work with the people that can actually get us to the promised land? And you mentioned it, you talked about working with the right legal team, working with the right, but also working with the right people that understand how to market your brand, because you can't be everything to everybody and you can't do it yourself. So you have to also be willing to let go of some of your profit so that you can grow and put it in the hands of the people that know exactly what they're doing. So yeah, that's kudos to you and your team, Susan.
to go to your point, we were able to do that because the data we have access to outside of Nigeria is so vast, so we can tap into that easily. But unfortunately, within the continent, South Africa is an exception. It's really hard to get proper data in our market. So a lot of it is guesswork if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, people just tread blindly and just waste money and then get upset. Why am I not converting? I'm spending millions of naira. I'm not getting any sales. But you must use data. I mean, I know that's obvious, but you absolutely must have a data specialist on your team when you're looking for conversions. Otherwise, you're just treading blindly.
Thank you. Well, how would you characterize successes or failures in a creator platform collaboration? So, for example, I mean, with your platform, has there been any situation? It could be a success story, it could be something that didn't work, just so that we have a tangible example of, creators know what to do and I guess not what to do.
A lot of the creator-led relationships that we've had has been fantastic. And the reason why it's been that way is because we have ensured that, just like what we're discussing now, a lot of our content are actually creator-led. We ensure that the creators are at the forefront of the project, they're leading, the initiatives while we're there to really support. Ensuring that also, if I also put it with the IP that you were also talking about, is ensuring that relationship doesn't really, because by the time you put your content as a creator on a platform and the negotiation in the first place, it's not even going great. The creator isn't excited to work with you again. But if you ensure that, everybody is happy, they're going to the bank smiling, and they're doing the work, because that's very important. They're doing the work as well, and they're putting their 100%. So for all the producers or the productions that we've worked with, it's been really fantastic, maybe because it's our first time too, so and it's very new for us. So it's been great stories.
One person that you went like, maybe this is not the one.
No.
Okay, we need to get
We're still, yeah. But even if it's not something we have, really experienced. We were very intentional, with this point. So that's very, very key for us. It's like, the intentionality is top notch. You don't want the platform to be out and then people are like, that was bad. So from us is ensuring both the business and the creator, everybody's happy.
Well, I do not have a platform, but I've been privileged to work with a couple of platforms. Yeah, like I said, being intentional as a platform is very key, especially at the early stages of collaboration, because you have to do your background search, basically the due diligence to make sure that whoever you are collaborating with is at the same level with you in terms of vision and what exactly you are trying to achieve. Because, like I say, having the wrong partner is the worst thing you can do to yourself as a business or as a creator, especially as a creator. So if you have a partner who doesn't understand, like I always tell people, if you're going to collaborate with anybody, make sure that your collaborator understands the process or trusts you enough that you understand the process. Because that's the only way, and it's like what Colette said, allow the creatives be creatives, but then those who understand the business should also focus on the business, while at the same time making sure that the creatives do not get out of the vision which is being created. So yes, I think being intentional is very key, understanding your creators or collaborators, and there have been some cases that didn't quite pan out well, but I think for them so far it will be good, because I know a couple of people who have produced stuff for you, and they're good people. And I'll join that league too.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. So far we've kind of touched on, the initial conversation around like the cultural moment that Africa is having as a global catalyst, and we moved on very quickly to platforms and technology, the new gateways, and now we're moving on very quickly to monetization and really digging down on ownership and keeping value in Africa. Now, in as much as I don't want to use this example, but it's the only one I can think of now. I mean, we all watched, or we've all heard about, My Father's Shadow. Fantastic movie. Saw it at the premiere at Film House. Know the producer, Wale Davis. Fantastic guy. Watched it. We're all proud. or a week or two after, we hear the great news that it's been sent in, for the Oscars. And I was so excited, and I was reading the story, and I just saw in the category, and my heart fell. But I get it. And, you've touched on that today. At the end of the day, if I'm bringing the money, and you control the IP, but it just seems great that they were able to put that story out there, but it just seems like another situation where we kind of lost that opportunity. And I want to come to you about that when we talk about monetization and ownership. Aside from visibility, because what that did was make My Father's Shadow visible. Everybody was like, wow, they shot this in Nigeria, so great. But how can we ensure that that value chain, the wealth, remains here with us? Even I guess the IP remains here with us. I mean, see what you did with Osamide, for example. How can we recreate more of that?
So I think it sort of begs the obvious gap. And I think the way I see it, especially maybe as a more recent, used to be outsider, just an observer of the industry, apart from being in the industry now, there's a concern, there's a valid concern, and I will go further from the end to the beginning, of where we are in the value chain of the industry. And it is that, first of all, you're almost quite wowed by even the advancement that the industry has made without the structure that it has had. But nonetheless, it's obvious as we're going on this path that it's a dangerous place where the important parts of the value chain are not being well funded. The industry has suffered extreme under-resource. And it's interesting for me sort of seeing on both sides that there is a world of capital allocators, different kinds of capital allocators, who are eyeing the industry but not understand how to approach or get into the industry. And there's so many creatives who obviously need funding, have this great products, great ideas, great projects, but also don't know how to speak the language of the fund managers and the investors. And quite a huge gap there. And apart from the language gap that, where, and I think we spoke about it earlier on, where we just need maybe some more middlemen who help to interpret the language digestible to both sides, is also that we need, how do I put this? We don't have, and when you think about when you talk about an industry that goes into crisis, and I don't believe we're in any crisis mode, I think it's a correction. You see a situation where on the story side, that whole development side, there's a lot of advancement, right? But you look at the leg of the distribution, or the monetization of how you fund the industry, they're very weak. And then you see that if this continues to grow just on one base and the other sides are still falling, there's no how that distortion will not cause what can be potentially a crisis. And we've seen the vulnerability that we have when we see these streamers who just sort of get up and go because, they were good that they helped us to lift the prowess of the industry because it made us, do better in the production quality. But they go out and you see the impact that it makes. And so there's a call literally for funding on every side. So funding for the story, one side. But after that, funding for the infrastructure itself, the people that need to be building the base that supports the stories. Do you get? So it's one thing to have film financiers, which is one set. But there's another gap of people who would finance supporting the backbone of the industry to make us thrive and have our own base so that we're not so dependent on just the foreigners and when on or how they play. So going back, of course, to the example you gave with My Father's Shadow, it's really, I think, a call for it's just really that we need our local investors to be doing more. Do you get? And I think there's something to be said, of course, about the pathway of people of a collaboration, maybe at first, that gives you an audience. So, for example, you can't take away the audience that brought in the kind of capital that was. So maybe there's something to be said of, coming together at some point. Then at a point, you then need to stand on your own. And there's a big gap, is all I can say. I don't know how much but it's really also, and we talked many things about that caused that gap. There's one which Susan had mentioned even about the data sets. a lot of people say that investors don't want to take a risk on the industry. But a lot of investors don't know how to assess the risk of this industry. Not that they don't want to take the risk, they take the risk in their daily lives every day. Investment is all a risk and reward game. It's not even having the data sets to be able to assess, how do I price this risk? First of all, it's not there. So, issues of IP is another level or another layer. Issues of trust is another layer. You have a lot of, even the disposition of a lot of creatives who don't know how to handle investor money. We don't understand accountability. That is not free money, that I owe you information. If you're giving money, I owe you to tell you it's investor relations. I must carry you along. I cannot have raised all these funds from you as an equity investor, and then I got into trouble, now had to borrow 100 million, and then you, the investor that gave me equity money, does not know till the end of the project. After I've heard that you've made so and so, then you come and tell me that you borrowed. And it's just not done. So many investors, and I've spoken to quite a few, who are also as heartbroken as the creatives are, as to how they have been handled. Because this is not free money. This is people have trusted them, and then they put it in there. And people can't just be accountable. So there's a huge, I guess there's many, and I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think it's all sort of, there's obviously a gap, and but there's no doubt that the funding exists, and there are different kinds of capital. There are different kinds of capital that I feel that the industry needs. Even philanthropic capital right now that is lacking, because there's parts of value that needs not pricey funding, but soft funding. And so, yes, it's really a call for more people to sort of step up and find different financing models, a lot of which I really want to support the industry with, in looking for the different kinds of financing models that fit the different needs. And we're here for it, is what I like to say.
First things first, the Bank of Industry was trying to put some form of structure as far back as 2015. Because I was then working with a company known as AfriNolly. I don't think they exist anymore. And they were trying to put structures in terms of distribution, development, and production so that they can build more screens. Because at the end of the day, if we have like a complete value chain that works, then everybody will make money. But along the line, a whole lot happened. And I think that entire funding went down because most studios weren't paying back their loans. And I mean, it was a very, very low interest loan of about 9%. And you had almost 2-3 years to pay. But what I'm trying to say is that lots of banks have tried to get into the film space, but they don't even understand how to, because there are no structures. If you go to Computer Village, if you go to Alaba, if you go to Ladikpo Market, you see lots of banks are set up there because they understand this is a product they sell, they put the money in the banks. But I don't want to use the word Nollywood, with the film space in Nigeria, even when, like you said, an investor gives you money, most of the creators have made it a habit to just, okay, I have 200 million naira. This project is going to cost me 80 million naira, but I'd rather spend 20 million naira. So at the end of the day, the project doesn't come out good. You can't sell the product. The investor gets burned. I mean, I have personal cases about someone very close to me who put in money into a project and got burnt of over 150 million as far back as 2016. And today wouldn't touch anything film because they know that there's money in that space, but how do we get the money back has always been the question. And most of these creators go on and make the same mistakes and come back and say, oh, funding is a challenge. We can do better as an industry, and that's one thing I know, because when I see lots of creators who say funding is a challenge, but you've had access to over 300 million naira to make probably like 2 films at a time where you could still make a good film for 30-40 million naira, and then you blow that opportunity and you come back and say funding is a challenge. What challenge is that? You've had access. So my point is, until we put structures in place and processes that will enable us see a pipeline from development to distribution and the money coming back, these investors will only just watch us from a distance. And that is why a film like My Father's Shadow would get funding from, is it BFI? And BFI will see the potential and say, well, it's our money, so it's our IP. Until we start, you said this earlier, structure, how does the business work? Because it's a business. It's not just, oh, like she said, the creativity is growing, but the business is not growing. And I think now is a good time for us to reset that mindset of, oh, there will always be a savior coming to save us, a Netflix, a Prime. Everybody, or rather most people, have chosen the path of YouTube right now because, oh, it's direct creator to revenue and it's working for them. But is that the level we want to play for at the rest of our lives? No. I think we need to start thinking, how do we, like she said, Accelerate Plus, how do you get an Accelerate Plus to become a Disney Plus, a Paramount Plus, an Apple Plus? How do we get such a platform in the phones, TVs, smart TVs of those in diaspora? For example, America has over 40 million African Americans that consume Nigerian content. Because while I was at the AFM, American Film Market, in 2017, there was a guy who gave that data and said that they are willing to watch our content, but how do they access it? That is why you see most of them making numbers on YouTube and they think that, oh, that's where it ends. Some of those people that are out there that want to see our film don't even go to YouTube because they just think it's low quality. And I'll give you another data, which was what I got from the guys at Netflix last year. So I kept bragging, oh, my film was #1 for over 5 weeks on Netflix. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but let's check the back end. So they did, and they realized that while it was #1 for 5 weeks, it only did better in the Western world, but not in Nigeria. So in the US, in the UK, Europe, it had great numbers because those in diaspora saw it. I mean, it was #1 in Jamaica, in South Africa, in Brazil, and other places. And I was like, oh, this is impressive. But in Nigeria, I didn't get the kind of numbers because people can't afford to pay for Netflix subscription. Right? So they rather see it on pirate platforms. Do you understand? And so if 5 million people saw your film, probably 4,950,000 saw it on probably YouTube, Telegram, and some Ninja Rock, right? So how will a platform like Netflix stay when the subscriptions are not coming in? Do you understand? So we have to sit back. And I mean, there's a whole lot of conversation that has to go on around this, because I've said until the bodies like the Censor Board, the NCC, come together and say, you know what, we're going to create a task force that will put an end to piracy. I'll give you an example. I get to Canada and I was downloading some content. Yeah. Just, what's it called, a torrent. And I get to my brother's house and then I plug my computer and then it starts to download. He calls me from the office like, yo, are you downloading something? I'm like, I don't know, let me check. And they say, oh, I just got a bill. Do you understand? And that bill gets to $1,000+ sometimes. Yeah. In Europe, if you download from an illegal site, you're paying upwards of 800 euros to, yeah. There are some websites that don't even open because they've found ways to curb piracy. So a whole lot is affecting us as a continent. That's piracy, that's structure, and there is the funding. If there are businesses that are receiving funding in tunes of millions of dollars, it's because they see the business, the viability, and they see how the money is going to come back. But until Nollywood or the Nigerian cinema and film industry put in place a proper structure and process that says, okay, if you give me $5 million, this is how the money is going to be spent and this is how the money is going to come back, then you will have investors throwing in money.
So if we created our own BFI, and there's a BFI in every serious country that really wants to invest in film and content creation. If we had our own institute, these are our custodians, these are our protectors. These are the people that will make sure that we're working with government to get tax incentives. That is key. Why was Woman King created in Cape Town? I was watching Woman King, I could see Table Mountain. I said, how? How is this supposed to be Western Nigeria? You don't, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Because guess what, guys? They got their tax incentives. If they spent $100 million, they got 40% back just by working with local post-production in that country and also working with locals. These are the kind of things that we need to do, because guess what? Hollywood is not coming unless they're also getting something out of it. So even outside of us ourselves, why should Hollywood come to us when there's area boys that are dealing with them up and down, there's no structure, there's no trust? Let's also be real about what we are also doing to attract or not to attract the investors. But we definitely need a body like a BFI that has the right people in the room that know what they're talking about and can speak to protecting the film community. I don't think that currently exists, and it's something that we need to look at, because what it does is it protects content creators, it puts in structure with the government that protects and grows everybody. We're talking about trust, we're talking about people building houses in the village with their production funds. It even has a body where you can say, you know what, this is the person that investors will speak to first, or this is the body that the investors will speak to. The investors can then, without no gatekeeping, can say, okay, this is a list of production companies that are structured, they sorted out all their tax, they know what they're doing, that you can actually create with these people. Because then when Hollywood are coming and they think, I need to collaborate, why can they not be collaborating with Susan's company on the production, on the marketing of it, with Jay's company on the production, with Lilian on storytelling, with us on something, so everybody wins. But for us to even start having that conversation, there must be a body that protects and has our best interests at heart. And I really think that that body should be filled with people that have been there, done it, and they have a clear and a clean slate. That is very, very important. That's just my 2 cents.
She just mentioned film institutes, right? And I think we have guilds, but our guilds are not doing anything. I've been in places where I heard, so we had a meeting with Apple TV, and I'm like, when, where? And I'm like, how? Who was in the room? And you hear that, this, and that. And most times, you only hear about these conversations when something has gone wrong. You get, and when most of these investors, these distributors, these platforms that could actually add value to our industry come in, sorry, but they always have meetings with the wrong set of people. If we are being honest with ourselves, we have to do better. Hence the reason for a film institute that has people with integrity, people who understand what works and what needs to be done. Not just people who want to be the first on there to grab money, grab opportunity, and basically just nuke the opportunity for others. Because I don't want to say burn the bridge. They use nuclear weapons to basically just destroy these bridges. Do you understand? And I believe until we sit down amongst ourselves, the guilds, the filmmakers, and say, hey, we need a team of people that understand that there needs to be a certain kind of structure, a certain type of task force or committee that engages with these investors and let them understand that, hey, everybody's not like that, and we will find you the right people for collaboration. Then we'll just be in the same space and going round and round. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Just very quickly, we have touched on the critical elements that are lacking. We've touched on funding, training programs, right management systems, data accessibility, and regulatory measures. We touched on a working definition of what the new African pipeline is, different opportunities aimed at enhancing this creator ownership and wealth retention. But I just wanted to, as we wrap up, if there's anything that is heavy on your heart, like my mother will say when we're having our monthly meetings, that you want to say, at this point, because what Entertainment Week Africa is doing is making sure that these conversations, they take it and they sit down and they take the important points and push it forward. Now will be the time, and that would be it.
One of the key, and I feel one of the most important thing in our industry is the capacity building. We really need to take our capacity building more seriously, because if we don't, we're all going to be out of a job, especially, the people in our film food chain that don't have the right training and education for them to do the things that we need to do. You talked on My Father's Shadow, which was at the premiere. I think it's fantastically well shot and so on. But you find that most of the crew that shot that are not Nigerians, they're foreigners. Yeah, we shot in Nigeria. We have a few Nigerian actors in there. But the technical team are not from us. So one of the key things we need to do is we really need to scale up on our capacity building. And yes, I'm always going to have a plug of my platforms as well. We have this great training platform called the Accelerate Filmmaker Project, and we've been doing it for the last 7 years. Thank you, Dami. And we've always done it because when we started Accelerate, it was one of the key things we must do. We must train, we must give young filmmakers mentors, and we must open the door for them in Nollywood, because at the time, it was a more older generation of people, and there wasn't any of that give back. We've had the likes of Jay, we've had Kemi Adetiba, Colette Otusheso, and Bibi Shashwe that will come and train, they would give examples, and guess what? These guys will then act as mentors, and they will bring some of these young people onto their film sets and open the doors for them. We've seen so many successes from this thing, and I'm telling you, this thing, we've been lucky that the industry loves us and they support us, so a lot of it is because they see what we're trying to do. If we had the right funding and we could structure this properly, I know that you will not have anybody going to New York Film School. So eventually we want to build a proper institution that is our own creative. So I went to the London School of Creative Arts. Why can we not have our own Niger School of Creative Arts, where if you want to be a filmmaker, you go there. If you want to be a fashion designer, you go there. If you want to be a cameraman and you want to understand lighting, camera, you go there. If you want to be a post-production supervisor, you go there. These are real critical things. I think in the industry, we've had a lot of people that have done it. A lot of us are doing it in our own ways, but if we institutionalize it, it can really be a game changer for us. And for me, that is one of the key things that we should take from this. How do we scale up our capacity building properly so that the people that are coming after us have the tools to be great?
I'll make it short and sweet, right? So I know we cannot completely eradicate gatekeeping. So we definitely need new people. We need young voices. We need them to be in the room and making decisions for the new voices that are coming into the industry, because there are talented people out there, but they don't have the access. But if there's a younger person in the room fighting for those voices to be heard, then you see better stories, better structures being told. Yeah.
I think what MTN is doing is gold in the opportunity from a geographical standpoint that they're Pan-African, but also understanding the need to aggregate content and then build content on a base, on an affordable base, because we have an affordability challenge in the continent. So super proud of that initiative, and I'm hoping there's just a lot more coming together. Thank you.
So I always tell people, why are you telling a boy meet girl story when we have lots of rich African tales you can actually, because the world doesn't want to see you talk about Romeo and Juliet. They can do it better than you. What they haven't seen is our own culture. When I made Madame Koi Koi, everybody was like, oh, why are you making a horror film? I'm like, it's not a horror film, it's our own urban legend. I mean, they made Dracula, they made Bigfoot, they made all of that. And guess what? When I released the trailer, countries like Cameroon, Ghana, Ivory Coast, we're all claiming it's their own legend, not ours. So you see, we share similar stories, but nobody's willing to tell the stories. So I've always screamed at my fellow creators, tell the Nigerian story in a Hollywood format, which is take their production value, take their structures, but tell your own stories. And once we can do that, I think the world will see us. And speaking about capacity building, I think that is the way to go, because we have so many people. Like I said earlier, when me and Colette were having a conversation, we said we have created lots of monsters. And it's as a result of not having the right training in specific fields. I started mine in 2017, where I did free trainings for filmmakers, writers, producers, and directors. And I did a very big one in 2020, right before the pandemic, where Ford Foundation even funded it. So I trained 30 filmmakers and basically taught them collaboration. Because 6 departments, writing, directing, producing, cinematography, audio post, and video post. And 5 people in each of these departments, you form groups and you pitch a story to me, and I funded all 5 short films. So I did that in 2020, but then I've been busy and all of that, but I've always thought about giving back, because I always believe one thing. When I came into this industry, like we call them the egg bones, nobody opened or gave me any access or any direction. Instead, they kept whatever they knew. But everything I have done today, I literally kicked the door open for myself. So I understand that there are lots of young, creative, brilliant filmmakers, which apparently feels like a threat to some of the older folks, and they wouldn't want to let them get into the room. So if I can give them access, share the right information, the right knowledge, I'm always up for it. So yeah, capacity building is important. So we know what we are doing. When we have conversations with these foreigners, we are at par. We understand the language they are speaking. So when they're talking development, we understand the language. When they're talking production, we understand the language. They're talking post, we understand the language. So we don't just look like, oh, these people again.
So I think I wanted to add capacity building. We actually offer that at our agency, because again, I'm a big believer in not being a gatekeeper. Like at the end of the day, we're only as good as the next generation coming up. So I think it's very important we train, especially women. Sorry, men on this table. I'm very passionate about that. Okay. Oh, fantastic. 20 female writers. Fantastic. You actually need a round of applause for that. That's awesome. But I wanted to sum up. I think it's important. This is part of what we do when we give our, training. I don't see creators as just creators or performers. They need to learn how to create a business and a brand. So I treat them as startups, okay? So whatever content they're making, I always try and tell them, okay, you're a TikTok creator, but how can that sit on Instagram? What is your pipeline from your brand, D2C, direct to consumer? That is the end game, and that is why K-pop is one of the biggest, K-drama, the K-pop industry is one of the biggest industries in the world, because they have stringent pipelines to get to that. So my point is that we need to switch our thinking from, I want to go viral, that's short term, that's like a week of love, to how does my brand stay here? How do I outlive anything else here? How can it sit on all these platforms? And how can I basically make my brand matter? And not just in Nigeria, but globally.
Thank you so much. I think that was a really, really good conversation. I really appreciate all the panelists. And Entertainment Week Africa, I think we are a wrap. Thank you so much for coming.